Hey y'all, CB here at NBS Welding. I got a little project here I think is going to be pretty neat. Something a little bit different. We're waiting on a steel truck to come for one of the big jobs, and while we're doing that, we got a little motorcycle stuff to pedal with here. So let's take a look. What we got here is a motorcycle swing arm. This is steel for a small race bike. Now, my area, dirt bike racing for these kids is it's a big thing. It's a big thing that families get into. It's great. We were into it. Me and my stepbrothers were into it when we were kids. And I have got one stepbrother, Jason in particular, that was really good at racing, and they all still race. My brothers do. I don't. I never did. But I was into it. I was into dirt bikes, and it's just one of them things that people really enjoy around here and a lot of places. But what we're into with this particular motorcycle swing arm is my buddy that runs the Smitty Suzuki up the road. He's working on this race bike for this fella, and this fella wants this swing arm to be 2 inches longer than what it is now. And so my buddies looked around, and they can't find a solution other than to cut this one and make it 2 inches longer. So that's the reason he got a hold of me. I am going to attempt to cut this swing arm and make it 2 inches longer than what it is. And we talked about some different ways of doing it. My buddy that works on the dirt bikes, you know, him and I both at first were saying, well, we ain't going to have a 3/4 by 2 inch rectangular tube exactly right here that is the same wall thickness, but we could just put a 3/4 by 2 flat bar in it to make it longer. Now, I thought about that a little bit, and I do think that would work. And on a little thing like this swing arm, I don't think you would really ruin it by using a solid bar. But I don't think that a solid bar, I was just telling my buddy, I don't think that a solid bar is the best thing. And the reason being, from an engineering standpoint, there's a lot of times and there's a lot of times where there's a reason that tubing is used. And one of the reasons that tubing is used for things is because it has a lot of flex, and you can take a piece of tubing and you can twist it, and when you let it go, it goes back where it came from. Really stiff, solid bars don't necessarily behave that way. Stiff, solid bars either bend and stay bent, or they don't bend at all, meaning they don't have any flex. And in either case, that's probably the wrong thing for a motorcycle swing arm. You know, for a motorcycle swing arm, we're going to want something that would flex and then return. So, like I said, we're going to do this with what we got here. And I don't have, we put a mic on this thing, and it's not exactly 2 inches vertically, but it's close. Checking on the width of it, it's not exactly 3/4. It's like 0.798. But obviously it's probably a metric tube, to tell you the truth. So what I can do with what I got here is I think I'm going to end up probably bending some metal in my brake and making a few channels, and welding those channels together to make up a 2 inch extension for this swing arm. But there's a couple things we're going to look at right away. One of the things you got to consider on something like this is the width of this and the back's got to remain the same. So where you're going to extend something like this, you have to extend it in a portion of the swing arm that's straight. You know, if we look at this part of the swing arm where it's actually a portion where the swing arm is still getting wider. Now, if you were to cut that where the swing arm is still getting wider, if you were to cut that and extend it 2 inches, you'd be making this dimension inside of here bigger, and we don't want to do that. This, you know, where the wheel goes, this should remain the same width. But I can see where for sure, let me get my tape measure pulled out here. You know, I can see where it's like 6 3/4 in the back, and I can measure quite a ways up the swing arm, and it's still 6 3/4. You know, to about there, which puts us in front of this. There's a piece right there, two pieces right there welded on the swing arm. That these are parts that hold the brake caliper. So those things need to be there as the portion of where the brake caliper locks in, that prevents that part of what prevents the brake, you know, from moving, the brake assembly. So first thing I think I'm going to do probably is cut me a piece of metal and weld it across the back of this thing. Put a couple tacks on it so that the width stays what it is. I'm also going to make some marks on it where I'm going to cut it. And I'm going to cut it open. And I'm also going to take some 14 gauge steel sheet, and I'm going to bend a couple channels in the brake and see what it takes to get something about this size made up in my brakes. So this will be cool. Watch this. So thinking about things I would be doing to figure out exactly how I'm going to line this up, you know, before I cut it apart. And like I mentioned, I think one thing it's a good idea to do is I've cut a piece of scrap tubing that's just exactly the width of the inside right here, and I'm going to tack that in there. I'll put that in there and put 4 tacks on it, and that'll lock this rear section, you know, the way that it is. So that'll be a little bit less to worry about. Then the next thing I was looking at, like, how would you line this up? And I'm noticing that the top of this swing arm, it's all completely flat plane. So in other words, if I was to lay this on the table, now there's a part right here which I could remove that. I could take that off. But what I'm getting at is this: if you flip this thing over, other than that plastic thing, everything else here is perfectly flat. So another part about lining this up is the fact that you could put this on the table, and if you know that top side, you could straight edge off the table. And so I was looking at anything that would interfere with using that, and I realized there's some welds sticking up where this rear section of the swing arm's welded on here. If you look right here, this little bit of weld is sticking up at a plane higher than this flat plane that I'm talking about. So if you look at the other side, see what I've already done. I took a sanding pad and I flattened that out. This one's already been done, and this one I will do. Now, I don't think I've taken enough weld off that to make it any weaker. Not by any means. But it will provide the... See, if I want to use this to line it up and I leave this weld here, then that's a bump that's actually... Although it wouldn't be holding it up very much, it would be holding it up because it's higher. So that's one trick I'm going to use, is the effect of the fact that this is all flat. And I'll probably take this off to make it so that I can straight edge the whole thing. With these 3 clamps, you can kind of see how I've got everything, the swing arm's upside down, and I've got everything where it's fitting flat on the table, including my rear bar I'm going to tack in there. And I've got it squeezed down. So that's one side that we can go by. By having that way where, you know, at least one thing's flat, that should help us line stuff up, because when we cut it and we're going to weld it back together, it'll give us something to go by. I did a little doos while I was charging my phone, and did a little bit of welding, and I want to show you that. So the way I put the first channel I made on the inside of the swing arm, I ended up welding inside of the tube. And I thought that would be good in the event that I ended up grinding the welds flat on the inside of the swing arm on the tire side here. What I'm realizing is I'm not gonna sand those welds flat. The pass that I ran there, I had prepped it pretty good. Actually did my weld prep on that with a cutting wheel after I had already reached inside the tube and welded. So I'd reached inside the tube and welded it. Then I did some weld prep with a cutting wheel, and then made these welds that are on the inside of the swing arm. And that pass filled up nice without needing another pass, but it's not big and humpy. It's not sticking way in there where it's, I've got no doubt that it's not in the way. If it's not in the way, I ain't grinding it off. And any time that I would say, if it looks okay and the weld's not in the way, don't grind it off. You're making it weaker if you grind it off. It's nice to leave the weld there. That's what I think anyway. And this is a situation where I'm going to leave it there. The next thing we're going to be doing would obviously be taking our outer pieces that I made and putting them on there and welding all that up. And when that's welded up, this temporary tack bar that's holding the back can be removed. So we're ready to do that. We're at that point. We're getting close to finishing this up, and it's looking really good. I'm happy with it. Well, I got that thing welded up, you know. That's going to be it for this one. I really appreciate you watching it. Oh, you want to see it, don't you? You're thinking, man, ain't you going to zoom in there and show us that swing arm, see what you did to it? Come on, CB, show us the swing arm. Can we see the swing arm? Come on, man. So I got it chucked up in the positioner here, and what I decided to do, especially with this being one that's steel, I'm going to go ahead and spray some paint on it for him. It's probably, the reason it makes the most sense for me to go ahead and paint it is it's probably a lot easier for me to do than it would be anybody else. Since I can throw it in that clamp and stick it in the welding positioner. Now I'll be able to do this in a few minutes where, you know, somebody else might have a hard time getting paint all the way around it or whatever. So let's put some paint on it for them. Hey y'all, we're coming to you from the break room here at MBS Welding. I want to show you the t-shirts we got. The MBS Welding t-shirts got MBS Welding on the front, American flag on the sleeve, great big MBS Welding here on the back. Helps the channel if you buy a t-shirt. If you're interested in a t-shirt, send Tina an email request, nbswelding@aol.com. Thank you. What's going on, Ralph? I heard this guy when he showed up. I heard him before I ever seen him. You hear him going meow, 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 meow. That's all he ever does. I heard him before I ever seen him. I was in the break room. He showed up on the porch. Meow, meow, meow. He was running his mouth. I named him Big Mouth Ralph. Then Tina started calling him Ralphie.